what are the parts of selling your home that are tricky to overcome. And I thought that obviously he's even more of an expert than I am. And so he was going to touch on a couple of points that are like actually come up when determining the value of your home. But also focus in on this emotional aspect and why it's so hard to overcome. So Chad, I'll give it to you to do.
Yeah, thank you. Uh, Working as a real estate agent for nearly 20 years, the you've seen just about everything, but um, when you take a step back and you think about like just the process itself of selling a home, um, I think it's important to start at the why, because there's a number of factors that can really kind of determine why someone is selling their home. It can be, they need to move for work, they're downsizing, there might be a change in family circumstances, but um, all of these things can really kind of bring feelings of, I think, uncertainty and anxiety. Uh, but ultimately, our job is to kind of guide and navigate and help a seller really through the process. So um, the the emotional part of selling a home, and I loved the exercise that we started with, but um, there's a lot of memories and attachment that are with a home. Homes often hold sentimental value. Uh, they're places where significant life events occurred, memories were made. So letting go of that can really be difficult for people, and that that is, I think, a big part of the conversation that I, as an agent, have with people, because um, this the process itself of selling a home is difficult. It can be complex. It can be um, stressful, but the purpose, I think, really is kind of the driving um, factor that I think we need to start with.
Yeah, and it's like that when you're talking about memories and attachments, like goes back to that experience that I had as a young girl, right? And moving into a new home and being like, wait a minute, I just left all my friends. I've just left everything I know, everyone I know, my school, everything that was familiar and close to me. And that can be hard to let go of. And then not to mention as an adult, when you are, selling your home and you're having to say goodbye to all those potentially, right? Depending on where you're moving. And like Chad said, your reason why that you're having to say goodbye to maybe certain friends, some of your community. And that takes a bit. So just really understanding the why and bonding with people over those shared experiences and letting them share those memories and feelings that they have with their home, and then also helping them look to the opportunities that are available for the next homeowners, right? That they're going to love that backyard where, our kid played for the last 10 years. And look, they've got a 2-year-old who's going to, potentially have a young 2-year-old who's going to love that grass or climbing that tree and those same things. So I think that helping them through that and seeing the potential for what other families will be able to enjoy just like they did is um, is a great opportunity too.
yeah, so as we kind of explore, as we work with clients, we try to start at the why. We try to start at the beginning, because obviously the process is pretty, I won't say automated, but the process of selling a home is what it is. But we try to understand the why. We hopefully get to the kind of the hope and the excitement on the other side of it, because selling a home can also bring feelings of like hope and excitement for new beginnings and opportunities and kind of new memories and adventures that your family might be able to create. But um, there's a lot of emotional aspects that can kind of play into this process of selling a home, and each of them make them very complex and like deeply personal. Um, our role is to kind of help navigate those aspects, both on the front end and the back end, but then also throughout the process of just actually selling the home.
So what are some factors that that we as real estate agents actually take into consideration when determining the value of a home?
Well, I mean, really, we need to understand the market. The market, I don't begin to say that I know the North Idaho market or the Salt Lake City market. I consider myself a professional, educated, um, in this market that I work day in and day out. So I think understanding the market that you work in, specifically, also understanding how to look at homes when pricing for your client, and kind of a process for doing that. Um, and I think really being authentic and honest with your clients, because um, I found that more often than most, there are agents that will kind of sell something that they can't actually produce. So sell something that ultimately their clients are gonna maybe fall short with. So I could be telling them they could sell something their home for more than it's worth or quicker than they might be able to.
So like an example being like that like a homeowner who maybe thinks that their large third bay that could fit a motorhome, man, that's going to add at least $50,000 to our value, right? Like, so there's those different aspects too of like, right, we think kind of even as you demonstrated in that exercise, Charmaine, of what holds value to us may not hold value to the individuals or families looking to purchase your home. And so those are things to take into consideration. That there is a price per square footage to consider when valuing your home. And then so you may think, oh man, that third car garage where they can park their motorhome, that's gonna just explode it. Everybody's gonna want that. And then you get your valuation back, and you realize, wait, that didn't really change our value at all. I thought that was going to bring it up. And then you kind of have to have the conversation like we have today of where the things that you value kind of meet with what the property value is. And a lot of people think, well, my neighborhood is the best neighborhood and it has all the kids in it. Well, that's appealing to somebody who has kids, but what if it's somebody who doesn't want kids or doesn't have children? Is that going to hold as much value to them? So I think really educating clients, like you said, on that aspect of those things where you think they hold value because it's near and dear to our hearts. But as you saw, we all kind of had different things that we valued that in our homes, and that's the same when you're working with clients, buyers and sellers as well.
And I think it's important to note that the most people tend to um, look to an agent, look to a real estate professional for guidance, but ultimately they've got an idea in mind for what, like Lindsay said, what it's worth, and our job really, like I said, is to kind of just be that authentic and honest third party that can provide the data, can provide the stats, can provide the I'd say guidance that will help them price their home properly. And Jeremy, not to put you on the spot, but yesterday we talked through some things that I think we could do better, and one of those was discussing educating our clients on the front end for maybe price adjustments or things that we needed to do as we listed a home. I think in this market right now, interest rates are higher, values are high, days on market tend to be a little bit higher. So I think it's important as we work with clients that we are have a good line of communication, that we are constantly talking about the the plan, the timeline, if there needs to be adjustments made. It's very important because this is typically the largest transaction or largest event in somebody's life, purchasing or selling a home. So it can be stressful. So I think that communication is important. At, as we work with buyers or sellers, I think it's very important to kind of just continue to keep that line of communication open.
Yeah, what has your experience been with that, Jeremy?
Let's see there. Well, the communication is key because I think we talked about this a little bit yesterday with mistakes happen in the real estate transaction world. People are unhappy, people are emotional, and then someone makes a comment about their house or does something, everything can kind of get blown out of the water and be a bigger deal than it normally is. But if you do the right things, you set the expectations up front, you communicate that these are the following things that could lay out. Here's how it works. Here's the process, and have real honest conversations. Like I love using the terminology with sellers that the market has rejected your home, because it's not me rejecting it. It's not the buyer necessarily rejecting it. It's the market. You got to look at it. You have to pull them out of the reality. It's not them against the world. It's what the market does, right? And separating the emotion of the individual versus what's going on collectively in having those conversations as well.
Good
I
job.
think
Like the way you said that is awesome.
I think there's a lot of key pieces up front. And if you set the tone early and you do what you say you're doing at the very beginning, when a thing happens, it's so much easier to allow the emotions to go away from it and continue the process a lot smoother. And you're not the bad person, or the company's not the bad person for, well, you didn't tell me about that, or you didn't do this. So we also talked briefly, it's not only telling them what you do and what you provide, and what to expect, but also what you don't do. They've got to understand that.
Is that part of it, or
What's that?
I said marriage counseling, is that part of the deal too?
Right.
Being a moderator and
Yeah, it's definitely, that's marriage counseling is a good way to bring it up. It's defining the lines and the boundaries with your individual client. And I think a lot of times we're in such a rush to get the listing. Like I know early in my career when I was focused on just being a real estate agent, I would leave meetings and I would get in the car and I'm like, wait, what did I just promise? I don't do that. If you just get into the emotion yourself, but if you have a strategic plan and you can actually communicate things up front, it's amazing when they can buy into what you provide and they're hiring you for what you do and what you don't do. The process is a lot smoother. It's easier to have the pricing conversation. And there's so much emotion in it, but using key things to take the emotion out of it, to bring it back to the relevant point. You guys talked about, and I thought this was a really good point. You talked about how they'll cherish something in their house and they assume that that is the one thing that buyers are going to want, and that's going to be the cherry on top, that's selling the house no matter what. But the question is what if that's the one thing the buyer is going to change? How do you give it value now?
Mm-hmm.
And it's having those tough conversations that most agents avoid, and then they wonder why it doesn't sell.
Yeah.
And so I thought the points you guys have brought up are really spot on. The biggest challenge, and I think the biggest challenge in a corporate environment, though, is to now embrace the emotion, take the emotion, but then separate the emotion from the transaction.
I love that. And we're really fortunate because being a more, I'd say generally speaking, a more emotionally connected individual myself, and Chad being a very logically minded and logistical person, it is really advantageous when we go into into any situation where there are emotions and logic being really needed, because it gives me the opportunity to really validate and hear them and kind of work through some of those emotions that they're having, offer that professional guidance in like a really different way sometimes. And then it's great, like you said, we can kind of almost separate those two aspects of here's the validation that you need, and here's the professional idea of what to expect and what this process is going to look like. And then having someone come in and be very logically lay out, this is very specific on kind of what your home is. This is what the comps look like. Here are the high points that could be of value. Here are the things that maybe we don't want to focus on, right? Like being able to offer that. And obviously, I think most individual agents can do that as well, but I do feel like that has been unique, and really a great opportunity for us, working together and being able to have those experiences, and really it makes it easier. I say easier, but easy-ish, to kind of separate those two things and give the clients what they need. So I really appreciate you saying that. And I love that idea of kind of separating the two, how you said, of being like, this isn't a me, I'm not rejecting your offer. It's the market. Your market is rejecting that. And it does help. It does help when you can take that emotion out of some of those things, right? Like obviously they're still going to be maybe hurt or frustrated or down. But just being able to guide them continually through that. And that is communication part is so vital. And I think even when most people reach out, I don't know about you guys, but our experience with anything is I will buy you the moon and the stars if you just look at me in the eyes and tell me, yes, you can have extra sauce with that. You know what I mean? Like I would do anything for that service, and feeling somebody really genuinely cares about me over like a brand or a name or anything else,
A paycheck.
over a paycheck. Like you value that so much, that connection. And so being able to provide those, I think we're in a really, real estate agents have that unique role of kind of offering that, and where the industry falls short, is where I think a lot of the complaints come from, where real estate gets a bad name, where kind of the negativity is. And so I think that's where we're doing something different in being so aware of the human aspect and of
Connecting.
these connecting to anybody, no matter where they're at, whether this is their first home or their 10th home, or maybe they're coming, from homelessness into a home. There's just such this huge gamut, and everybody has so many different experiences, and ultimately that connection and communication and all of those is just so important.
I love what you said about hearing them. I think some of the biggest mistakes is we actually don't listen to understand, we listen to respond, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the power of hearing somebody, especially in sales, is actually solving a problem versus selling a product or service. And so I think like what you guys lined up with that duo of understanding and hearing them and communicating to them. I was doing a training class the other day, and we kind of got into this subject. And it's funny, in sales, the golden rule actually kills sales. If you think about it, do unto others as you do to yourself. That's not the key. It's do unto others as they would want that to be done to them, right? It's what's their personality style. It's what are they asking for? What do they need? There's this great example from Ninja Selling. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but there's this great example where one of the top guys was moved to Colorado, and he works for Ninja. Peter is his name, and he's a great guy. Owned a bunch of Coldwell Bankers in New Mexico. What was fascinating is he went to this big open house party as he had just moved into the community, and there was a lot of agents there. There was a lot of large corporate office companies or CEOs there. It was just this big group and gathering of people in this community. And he saw one of this top agents, this woman, come in, and this couple went up and asked her, what's up with the market? And she just threw up on them, all the data, facts, everything they wanted to know. And you watch them just slowly crawl into their shell and back away from this experience. And he let that kind of pass. And then he walked up to him and he said, excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear what was going on there. Can I ask you a question? What did you mean by what's up with the market? And they were like, oh, I was just curious if it's okay time to sell my home. Because she didn't actually ask the follow-up question to understand what they were really asking to answer based on what they needed. She just answered based on what she knew and what she thought they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's able to refer them to an agent who ended up selling their house and doing that. And I think it's such a powerful tool, especially when we do this type of a project or company, is that we still have to have that ability to hear them and to identify and then communicate differently based on what they're asking for and what they need. And a
Yeah,
lot of time the pricing conversations go away, the commission conversation, everything goes away if you can actually answer their questions based on what they need.
right? Because it comes down to that. Nobody wants to be sold. Nobody wants to feel sold. They want to feel, dare to say it, special, right? Like they want to feel cared about. They want to feel valued. And I think that that is offering that. And just like you said that, the conversation that Peter had with the individuals who kind of had to absorb that kind of the thing that was thrown on them by the other agent. It's just that question behind the question. And I'm sure most of us are really familiar with it, but that idea of asking, what is the question that they're actually asking, right? And obviously Peter knew that. And that's an amazing example of just asking those additional questions. And I joke about being a marriage counselor or therapist as a real estate agent, but it really is a lot of asking questions to understand. And some of the questions are emotional, and yeah, and just navigating that requires skill and it requires practice, don't you think? Like you can't, sometimes you get the newer agents, like you said, even when you're younger and you just kind of are like, I'm just doing these things and I'm going to tell people what they want to hear so I can get it done. And yet at the same time, you're able to really like connect with people now, and see that a little bit differently and have a different experience. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a great follow-up to that, because that's something we have to solve moving forward too, especially when you add the elements of AI and pricing and these different things, is connecting the dots between what they actually need and what we provide. And so that is always going to be, that's the biggest spot that tech has always struggled to come into this market and compete. And it's one of the biggest challenges to solve. And also the fascinating thing when you look at tech and kind of what we're doing here, and then what we've seen is when you look at the life cycle of a lead or a person, it's kind of like a giant pizza, right? A pizza wheel, if you kind of picture it that way with me. Year one is they purchase the home. They know 3 or 4 people that might be interested in selling because they're familiar with the process and they're thinking about it. They know 3 or 4 people. Year 2, they know 3 or 4 people. Year 3, they know 3 or 4 people. And the average person lives in a home 7 to 8 years. It's probably going to go to 10 because of interest rates and different things now. But in year 8, when they're ready to buy, that's when tech spends all their billions of dollars to try to come at them. And that's where the only interruption is year 8. But if we would have had the relationship and the communication and understood who that personality was, and picking up all the business 1 through 7, which is why certain agents do such good, dominate certain markets. Then when we get into that world where year 8 is, the person who chose, if that person who chose their agent, 60, 70%, I have it up here. By the way, there is a report, everybody, and you guys are probably familiar with this. It's called the Home Buyers and Sellers Generation Trend Reports, and the Home Buyers and Sellers Reports that NAR does. It's the best thing NAR does for us. One of the only things I love about it.
I was just going to say, one of the only.
The one thing.
Yeah. But what they do is they provide a study based on all of these closings and how they chose their agents, why they chose them, why they chose their home, the experience of the process. And it gives a ton of data on what to think. For example, you would think commission would be a common number 1 or number 2 thing why they chose their listing agent. It's actually number 7. But if you look at it, the average, shoot, I'm going to run down to this page. I'll tell you real quick here. Okay. The methods used to find a real estate agent, between them all, referred by a family or friend, or previously used the agent that stayed in contact, between 43 to 57-year-olds is 60%. Between 58 and 67-year-olds is 66%. So majority of the people stay in that world and never get interrupted by tech because of that cycle, the understanding the life cycle of the lead. And when I was talking to Mickey, when we were discussing this before, I said, if we want to interrupt this and change this, we can't follow everybody else into year 8. We've got to follow everybody through year 1 through 7, because we will own year 8 that everyone's wastes their billions of dollars on.
Yeah.
And it's having these conversations up front, knowing the communication and staying in front of them is the process. And then when it goes to having that pricing conversation, if I just met them on year 8 when they want to sell, it's harder for me to create authority and trust versus if I've ran the gauntlet with them and gone all the way around that life cycle of that lead. And pricing homes changes. The conversation completely changes to, well, what do you think? Where should we go? Okay, I trust you. To, I don't know, I need a second opinion. Well, Zillow says this. It changes completely. And that's where we can win in this, is we can got to get through those phases. So when we go to compete with the rest of tech, because that's the only way the rest of tech can interrupt, is that year 8. That's where all the money's spent. Is we will own that year. We will own that for our clients if we manage those other years really well with this.
Agreed. And that's what I love about what we're doing differently with NestAgain and with circles, is really being available to people at these major intersections and these major points in their life where there are big changes. So we're there for them during those, but we're here for them in between as well. And it is being in the trenches with them, and it is providing that support all the time, right? Like being accessible, having groups that they can come to, that they can attend, that they can feel part of, that they can feel heard, right? And also get value from. And that is exactly what you're saying. That constant connection with people is where it is different. It's kind of that thing, if everybody says that's what they're going to do. We hear a lot of that in the agent industry, is like posting a lot of it on social media and in front of everybody's face all the time. But really, it's the people that you have that connection with and who you build trust with. And yeah, I think there's some stuff that's great, but really being present for people, and not just at those intersections, but all the time in between, is what sets us apart. And I mean, we're really grateful for this opportunity to kind of go over and review this emotional aspect and the connection and how you can kind of overcome those. And I really appreciate Jeremy's, touching on the separating the two a little bit and allowing a professional to guide you through it and to hear you. And I'm excited for our next real estate circle, where we are kind of going to go a little more in depth on those. What are the specifics of determining the price of your home? What are the things that you take into consideration? What are some of the steps you can take now? Because I think that will provide even more value and build on this conversation we've had today. So I really appreciate that. And thank you so much, Jeremy. Charmaine, did you want to share anything else with us or open up Q&A?
Yeah, what a beautiful conversation. I feel like as I was listening to the three of you, it's really about the experience and how people feel connected. For us to understand that, first, the toughest part is the emotions, like understanding what's behind selling the home, and really, that's what makes you great real estate agents, right? Is, like, here's what we're looking for. You have to somehow put your therapist hat on, and you're not even a licensed therapist, right? You're helping people through the emotional part of it, which, is a very heart forward thing to do. But for us to sit here and like understand, there's an experience that we have to be with, as in selling real estate. And I love the tie-in from year 1 to 7 so that we can grab them in year 8. Like, all of these things are just really brilliant and can help us, NestAgain and Ella and all of these things, just tie it all together and make a difference in a way that no one else is doing. And I really just appreciate it. And we were talking about experience before the rest of the group got on, and it's all about, that saying, people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Right. And so it's all of these things, right? Like, oh, that felt good. Working with NestAgain, they really get it. Like, these people are really leaning in to the entire experience. And so when we were talking through last week, the toughest parts, and you said emotions, like, let's start there. That was really insightful as we build into the next thing on how to support our members, moving forward. So thank you. I appreciate what you had to say. It's really important. Thank you. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, Justin, Courtney, John, if you wanted to bring your voices into the room or comment at all.
I think you guys are all spot on. I think just in general, like beyond real estate, the idea of asking questions, I'm kind of shocked at how often people don't do that. And I have like a 20 question rule that if I've asked 20 questions and you haven't asked me one about myself, we're probably not going to be friends. And so, like, I think you can't know. Every person is a person. I love that saying, and you have to ask the questions, and then by actively listening, you really can get to the heart of it. And so, I don't have anything beyond that. Just to confirm that everything you're saying, I agree with, and I think now it's a question of where do we find these individuals. I think circles is one, but where do we find these individuals before that flywheel, so that we can actively ask them and use AI and all these things. So that's where my mind's headed right now.
That's awesome. And do you guys remember that last conversation where one of the things Michelle was talking about was like that something like, was it 90% of the decisions that we make, the study says are emotional, are based on how we are feeling in that moment. And that's significant. That is so significant. And to your point, Charmaine, of that is why that connection is so important. That is why the questions are so important. Is because we are emotional beings, and being responsive to that is valuable.
Yeah.
Mentioned that sometimes it's like couples therapy or family therapy or individual therapy. What do you say to someone who is feeling discouraged right now with home prices and with interest rates, what they are, feeling like they're kind of locked out?
Oh, this is a good one. We've had a lot of recent experiences with this.
That's a great question, because that's, I think, the most common question that we get right now. A lot of people will approach us and ask, can I sell my home? It's not that I want to sell my home or I'm going to sell my home. It's, can I sell my home? Because the conversation's more than just selling the home. It's, can I afford the next home? Can I buy a comparable home, similar size, bedrooms, baths, at the current interest rates? I mean, a lot of people have equity in their homes, but they are feeling discouraged because they kind of feel trapped. I mean, it's great to look at, oh, my home might have several $100,000 in equity, but they feel trapped that they can't sell their home, not just selling it, but take those proceeds and then go buy something else or build something else, because interest rates are at an all-time, well, not all-time high, but they're high, and payments are going to be 2x, 3x, 4x from what they're currently paying, even after taking that equity and moving it into something else. So the conversations are, I love the word discouraged, because I think a lot of homeowners are discouraged, kind of feeling trapped.
A lot of wannabe homeowners, right?
Yeah, and that's not even counting the large group that want to be homeowners. They're stuck on the sidelines because they cannot afford it. They can't enter the market because of the payment. They cannot enter the market because of the down payment requirements. It's difficult with these home values right now, for both buyers and sellers.
But the beauty of that is it does allow us to be creative. So in that aspect of solving that discouragement, it is asking the questions. Do they have to sell? Are they just wanting to? Are they trying to maximize maybe an opportunity that's available to them? And what is their specific situation like? So it allows for a lot of creativity for us as professionals. And then too, I think there's a really big responsibility on our industry to do better, to create a better experience, to create more affordable housing and options and opportunities. And so there's a whole lot there to help people feel optimistic about. And I think that's part of what we're all trying to do here. Good question, Justin.
Love that. Thank you.
I want to add one thing to that too, is one of the tricks with this is in these type of markets, you can't help everybody, but you can give a pathway of what it would look like to get there. And I think actually that's where the AI could be special with its learned ability, is to provide a resource or a process of, well, here's what it's going to take to get there. Because it's important to get people into the market so that the best hedge against inflation is really your personal home. But the challenge is to actually get into the market a lot of times. But people want it, not necessarily they don't think they can get there. Sometimes can, but it's that path, understanding, taking away the unknowns. The more unknowns you take away, the more money you get paid when you sell your home. If people understand what the home is, what the product is, what it looks like, that's why builders are killing the market right now, is the incentives, taking away the unknowns, doing those things very well, where ordinary homeowners or their agents aren't having the ability to compete in that world. But it's bridging the gap of those, giving that path forward, taking away the unknowns, that opens the door in these type of markets to move the needle.
I love that path. It just made me think about one example, and kind of similar to like your 1 through 8 on your pie for the years, but about 12, 13 years ago, coming out of that 07, 08 period, we started a property management company. Not that we wanted to, but I was thinking specifically about one client, and he was a pastor. They were upside down on their home. They didn't want to lose it. And he approached us and said, what do I do? And that path was, well, why don't we rent your home? Why don't we turn it into a rental? You're going to go move in with mom and dad, which they did on the other side of town. And they rented their home out for about 10 years. Come full circle, I sold the home. Conversation was simple. It was easy. The trust was there. They ended up not losing their home, but 10 years later, they actually did very, very well when they sold it. So that path, providing that path, not just saying, yes, I can sell your home, or overpromising, or, by overpromising up front, you're ultimately going to kind of fall short with them at some point. But providing a path that makes sense. And it might not be saying you should sell your home or you can buy a home right now. It's providing a path that makes sense.
I love that. Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, as we land this beautiful plane, I would love to hear Lindsay, Chad, Jeremy, before we walk away, if there was one thing that you want us to remember out of this entire conversation of one of the toughest parts of selling a home, is dealing with the emotional aspect. If we were to remember that one thing that you all said, what would that be? And I'll give you a minute to think about it. Justin and Courtney, Justin just put something in the chat so I can read that. Love that too. Let's create a plan and a path to get you into the home you want. Yeah, exactly. I love that. That was great. So if there's one thing to walk away with out of this hour of like a powerful discussion, what would it be?
I think it was what Lindsay said, where she heard them, she listened to them. I think that kind of leads the conversation from there, is the ability to hear what the need is.
And to that, I would say to have hope, right? Like when we're hearing them and responding, maybe we don't always have, it's not always clear right away what that path is going to be, but providing that encouragement and hope, even when a situation seems difficult or tough, I think I hope everybody feels that.
I think to be just authentic and honest, that's an important part, at least as an agent, to not oversell, not to let your ego get in the way, but to really provide some, I'd say, deep-rooted honesty and value in the service that you're providing to your client.
I love it. So moving forward, we will listen deeply, right? To what's being said and to be authentic in it, right? Like how do we show up in an authentic space where we're heard and respected? So thank you all very much to just tie it all in and speak to hope, right? So listen to understand in an authentic way, and we're also going to be able to speak hope to you. So this is beautiful. We'll take all of this with us into the next discussion, which we'll talk about uh, Chad and Lindsay. We're going to go where next month.
I believe it was the specifics of
Yes.
a home valuation looks like, determining that price point. Kind of from here, once we can we've talked a lot about the emotional aspect, and then if we kind of take that and set it aside, what does this other side look like? And walk through some more of that, what that looks like and what to expect, and how that looks kind of from both sides.
All right. So I'll see you next Real Estate Circle.